with the microphone. I'm going to call Committee of the Whole to order. First item of business is a resolution authorizing special events, Chapter 53 of the City Code.
So moved.
Support.
And who do we have to talk about this for us? Ms. Pittman.
Good morning. All right, so this resolution request, there should have been an attachment listing all of the events that are occurring between October of this year and April of 2026. All of those events will be required, of course, to have their certificate of insurance as well as their event action plan. And we work, of course, very close with other city departments to make sure that all of the requirements are met. I especially want to call out the Diwali Festival of Lights on Tuesday, October 21st from 8 to 9. They are requesting to discharge consumer-grade fireworks. They are located at 2525 Leonard.
Great. Any discussion, colleagues? Seeing none, all in favor of authorizing this group, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Mayor,
Yes.
Mayor, just for point of personal privilege, I want to thank Ms. Pittman for all of her event planning and coordination over a very busy and active summer, and has done a very good job, particularly in coordinating with the most recent Art Prize event. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks. So next item on the agenda is a resolution on Election Day polling locations. And I suppose our city clerk's going to discuss that? Yes?
So moved.
Support.
Yes, so we have upcoming election. The only thing on the agenda for most of the city is the Kent Intermediate School District, and then we have a couple voters in the Godwin Heights School District that has a millage request. So we're opening all of our precincts except for one. Kent O'Shea School is under construction, so the Election Commission consolidated Kent O'Shea with Brookside. A notice was mailed to every household in that voting precinct. And then we are not. I'm not requesting any change in pay for the election day or for the inspectors. Those were the pay rates that from the previous election.
Yeah. Interesting to me that I've already voted, even though we haven't established polling locations. But any discussion? I got my absentee ballot. You probably got it too, Commissioner Kilger. You can mail it right in. Commissioner.
Thank you. So this is an extension of the conversation we had earlier this year considering changes to polling sites. These changes include the elimination of several polling locations throughout the city, including half of them in the 3rd Ward. So as a continuation of my stance on that earlier this year, I still stay consistent, and this is the wrong decision for us right now. I think since we had this conversation this spring, there's been even more apparent attacks on voice, free speech, democracy, and access to the ballot box. And so I continue to say that this is the wrong choice for Grand Rapids. When we had this conversation this spring, I asked for an amendment to keep voting sites open in Black and brown communities in the 3rd Ward, and that was voted down. And so I'll be voting against setting these polling locations because I do not agree with closing sites throughout the city.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Brings us to our next resolution on a liquor license for the Elite District LLC development.
So moved.
Support.
City Clerk?
Yes, on Division Avenue, it's 100 block. If you're familiar with the building, it has a sign out front. It has a marquee sign or a neon sign says Elite. It was where Elite Restaurant was. So they're renovating, putting quite a substantial renovation into those two storefronts. And so one of the ways you can get a liquor license is through a development district license. So that's how they're requesting it. Where there's certain stipulations on how much money has to be invested. So, but all their paperwork and all their approvals are through all the vetting. They had to go through all the different departments.
And these folks came and talked to the DDA extensively. It's exciting. We're going to get some redevelopment down on that block, which has suffered some losses recently. So I'm personally glad to see this happening. Any discussion? Commissioner?
Do we have a limit on how many liquor licenses are available, or is there ever a constraint there?
Yes and no. So there is a limit, so there's different kinds of licenses. So we have quota licenses based on your population. If your population grows in the 10 years, they'll add quota licenses. But there's different ways that you can get a liquor license, and one of the routes is through this development district. So if it's inside one of our development districts, then we have to get a approval or a recommendation from the development, whether it's uptown, downtown, west side, for these development districts. There is not a limit on those.
Okay, all in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. This brings us to Brownfield Plan Amendment for 443 Sheldon, project that we've discussed before, but Ms. Renero is coming up to discuss it. Can I have a motion?
Support.
Good morning. Yes, thank you. This, just as a reminder, this is the activation of a new construction building roughly at Wealthy and Division for 26 apartments and 13 parking spaces, all electric and solar. And I just wanted to carve out the 6 units that are anticipated to be 60% AMI or below. I'm happy to go into more detail if you have any questions.
We did have this before us previously, Commissioners. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of proceeding, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to Ms. Renero not leaving and talking about a Brownfield Development Plan Amendment for Powers Place project at 764 and 800 Powers. Can I have a motion?
So moved?
Support.
Ms. Renero?
Yes, this is an infill project to make way for new construction of 8 townhomes, where we've got one of those units being restricted at or below 100% AMI. And we've got total project costs at $2.7 million, with roughly 1.1 of that in the housing TIF, eligible activity category.
Again, this is before us previously. Just to remind everyone, this was a close neighbor building this project. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carries. And that brings us to a resolution for project plan and issuance of bond for Beacon Hill. Again, for the public's reference, this is not us issuing bonds that will impair our credit in any fashion, but this is a necessary hoop for them to go through to be able to issue those bonds for what's a substantial redevelopment. So can I have a motion?
So moved?
Ms. Renero?
Yes, this is a roughly $190 million of investment to expand and renovate the retirement community at roughly Boston and Plymouth. This is the final step for commission. The next step will be going back to the Economic Development Corporation for final issuance. And again, this is going to activate about 149 units between the rehab and the new construction building.
Thanks. Any further discussion? Again, this was before us previously. Seeing none, all in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And that brings us to finishing chewing what we bit off a couple meetings ago, our annual performance report, which we got maybe a little more than halfway through, but there's a lot more ground to cover. So Mr. Matthews is coming up, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Appreciate the discussion to continue the dialogue from last week. As you said, we got about halfway through. So what I would ask today is allow us to go through the balance of the presentation. We have 3 sections: health and environment, mobility, and safety. And I have asked the staff to be very abbreviated in their overview this week, since you've had the material now for 2 weeks. Not much has changed since then, but we want to reserve more time for dialogue and discussion this week. We don't want to be hurried in our review of your feedback. So with that, Mr. Matthews will kick us off, then Ms. Behrens. If you'll go back one slide, please. Just a reminder on the timeline. As we continue discussion today, this sets us up nicely for a prioritization discussion at our retreat on the 13th. We'll also have a guest with us for some commission development. Mr. Funkhauser will be here to talk about governance and some of the issues that we are facing, given all the changes that are happening at state and federal level. And then we'll come back again in February for our mid-year performance update. And by then, we'll have the majority of the budget, at least when staff work will begin working on it this December, but that'll be our last tune-up before the final budget's presented in April. And then we'll go through the budget deliberation and adoption process. So with that, let's continue the dialogue on health and environment. Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Manager. So moving through health and environment, just a reminder on some of the priorities that we had for FY25, specifically around climate resilience, continuation of our work in terms of green space, recreation, and trails, maintaining, improving our water, wastewater, and sewer services, our focus on materials management, which will be a conversation here coming up, I believe, at the next meeting, and then addressing health disparities in our community. So I've separated these out by category, sustainability being the first one. In FY25, we completed our first climate risk and vulnerability assessment, as well as, advancing the work on the climate action and adaptation plan and completing our community engagement in that respect. We launched our Solarize program to increase access to the community to resources by giving them opportunities to pool their resources and receive discounts if they want to pursue solar. Continued our work on EH0, secured grant funding in that respect, also completed our home energy efficiency renovations in the South Dice Zone. And we're now moving into a process of monitoring and testing the impacts of making those investments. On the fleet and facilities front, it's notable we advanced our boiler replacement at GRPD. That's notable because we're in a position of either continuing our present practice or connecting to the STEAM district. And the decision was made to connect to the STEAM district, both to meet our efficiency goals, reduce our maintenance costs, and also improve our sustainability performance. Continued our electrification work, and you'll see that reflected in our performance metrics, and put together a real-time dashboard to be able to report out internally, and we're now talking about publishing that externally on our emissions from the fleet. From a water standpoint, we had over 1,700 lead service lines that were replaced in FY25. Also lined or replaced almost 4 miles of sanitary sewer and about 2.5 miles of water mains. We're finding that that's likely going to be an ongoing process for both. Given the age of some of our infrastructure, that lining is a more affordable and less disruptive way to extend the life of those assets. On materials management, we launched a pilot organics collection program here at city facilities. I just found out last week that we've now diverted about about 1.5 tons of organics through our city facilities alone. And that was a step towards how we might be able to pilot that more broadly with the community. We continued the engagement on our materials management strategy. We're actually going to be talking about that on October 21st, I believe. And then from a renewable energy standpoint, FY25 is when we signed a new contract with Consumers Energy that'll start in 2028 that'll ensure that we maintain our facilities on renewables. In the interim, we've reached that 100% goal through the purchase of RECs. And as you know, we're looking to localize as much of that as we can, and we advanced the work on Butterworth in that respect and are actually going out to an RFP, I believe, next week to be able to see if we can advance that work before July of 2026. On the Parks and Recreation front, you'll see we've continued to have success in introducing children in the community to nature. Made some changes, some very successful changes in terms of our pool pass programs, improvement to those facilities. focusing on trails with the development of the Riverfront Trail, Oxford Trail, ensuring that we have connectivity throughout our communities, standardizing the design packages there, and then looking at all of our facilities to do a broader assessment on the improvements that we might make in the future. Continued our work on the forestry program, and received $500,000 to advance some of our urban agriculture initiatives, which is important because when we talked about the CAP, I believe 6 out of the 20 that were prioritized were specifically around food access. You see our performance measures here. Everything is looking good. The one thing you'll see there in red that we're hoping that some of the initiatives we're bringing forward will address. You'll see the percent of residential waste that's diverted by weight. The heaviest thing that's in your garbage can is your organics. And that's why we've placed such a focus on how we might be able to divert more of that from the landfill. And then you'll see our mental health service referrals on HOT. That's been persistent over the last couple of fiscal years, right below 50. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Behrens. We'll talk about mobility.
All right, we were each given 7 minutes for our sections. I want to point out that Mr. Matthews hit it right on the mark. So in light of that, again, go relatively quickly and save your interest areas for your questions so we can dive deeper with your questions. But just a reminder, with the mobility objective, we're really talking about safe, coordinated, and available options for how to get in and around the city to the places people want to go. We also have a significant role in parking, which is part and parcel of mobility and economic development. So a lot of connectivity of this outcome area to a lot of our other outcome areas, including safety and economic development. Just a quick slide of where we're headed with our Vital Streets voted initiative. So this is an income tax that the voters agreed to allow us to use to improve our streets, and we've made certain commitments to get to a percentage of 70% good and fair condition by the end of that cycle. And you see we are continuing to make progress on that front. You hear about this during the budget process as well, but we, again, have commitments to the voters to spread that equally throughout the streets in our city, so relatively balanced between the first, second, and third ward, and we share a lot of details about that in the budget process. Just some significant projects that were completed in this past year. So again, we're looking at our fiscal year 2025 accomplishments. Because of construction realities, we tend to focus on the things that were completed last year, but that was our last full construction year. So you can see the miles that we were able to either completely reconstruct or resurface, as well as sidewalks inspected and new sidewalks installed. And just some nice graphics for you to see how transformative some of these major projects can be for the look and feel of the area. So again, not just a mobility improvement here. You're seeing different modes that are accommodated in this new design, a bike lane, wider sidewalks. You also see some enhancements in terms of green space and tree canopy eventually. Sometimes we have to take out bigger trees to put in more smaller trees, but eventually we're going to see that come in and create some of those shade and other pockets that are important in our urban areas, as well as the economic development support of just kind of creating more gracious space adjacent to those private properties that can then take advantage of that. So again, another project that's been a significant investment over a number of years as we do segments of Cesar Chavez improvements, including Clyde Park to Hall last year, and one under design now, and then Hall Street and Fuller. So just wanted to get through those graphics, very important. We, as I said, also are adding to the types of modes throughout the city. So here's a focus on the bike facilities that we were able to add. Always a lot of interest, both with this body and in the public, of how to add more bike facilities and bike lanes and bike connectivity. So lots of different options there, including some of the most significant sort of separated bike lanes that have some hardened infrastructure that is separating that bike lane from car lanes, and also more tactical urbanism, if you will, and ways to kind of create that visual separation that allows us to add some signals to drivers that they're sharing that space with a lot of other modes, including bikes, and encourage folks to slow down and think about all the users in the system. With respect to parking, a significant enterprise fund here at the city. So we have a parking portfolio that is managed, expected to pay for itself. And so in fiscal year 25, we've really, the mobility department has really been doing a deep dive on our parking portfolio through a number of engagements. We've been able to hear from folks again about that importance of our parking portfolio to economic development objectives. So that covers things like rates, monthly parking rates. How is that supporting the adjacent businesses that may rely on that, relieve some development cost pressure where there is robust public parking available that allows for redevelopment of some of our older buildings that tend not to be built with a lot of parking, and also opportunities for more investment. So lots of folks approach the city thinking, wouldn't it be great if we were to take over the parking piece of their project, manage that parking. So we've been doing a lot of work to understand our portfolio, how it operates, the operating costs, and also to make sure we're getting the most out of the portfolio as it exists. So a lot of technology solutions that we have identified and are building in order for people to be able, you know, with the power of the phone in their hand, figure out what easy parking solutions there are. We also continue to focus on this asset in terms of its usability for our customers. So a lot of focus on continued safety and cleanliness and the ease of using that during our bigger events. So we have a lot of focus for our staff in being able and prepared to address circumstances as they may arise. Just want to take a moment to emphasize safety of the system. So in any community, your mobility network is a significant safety part of our safety objectives for the community, and one of those places where we are continually looking to improve how the system is designed, how it is used, and educating users to ensure that it's safe for everybody as we continue to introduce different modes to what in parts of our community were really built around a car. We really do emphasize the data that we are able to glean from those different users, and that helps us understand where we may continue to need to make some safety improvements. So we're continually looking at crash data. We're looking at our Vital Streets program in terms of how we're engineering new parts of that system and ensuring that in design we're really thinking about safety to create those slower speeds and more separation between different users where possible. Just wanted to quickly remind folks we do have a car share program that we continue to support and provide people with more mobility options. Just a few quick pieces of information about where those can be found. And we completed, or we are in the last month of the first year of DART. So I just want to celebrate that for a moment and appreciate all the folks that have taken advantage of that service. We continue to work with our stakeholders and with the Rapid on the Dash service downtown. So again, we're constantly looking at data around ridership and customer service experience. And, you know, there are good news pieces here. So you see our ridership has really come back from where we kind of saw a trough there when we were thinking about the new service route. We were not able to get right up to 7 days a week, and now we've had more than a year at full service, and you see the ridership coming back. We also continue to hear opportunities for customer service improvements, so continuing to work with the Rapid on that, whether it stops or the experience on the bus itself. There's always feedback on the alignment and where the stops are, and can we move things here and there. So continuing to work with the Rapid, with the Mobile GR Commission on how to continually improve the Dash. Just wanted to share a little bit of feedback here about Also looking for opportunities to do some creative things in our urban rights-of-way. Again, that this meets safety objectives, it meets slowing down speeds objectives, and you may have had a chance to see the Division Avenue improvements south of Fulton that have been really appreciated by the businesses in that community, creating some more on-street parking. But this kind of bus platform kind of out in what would have been a lane of traffic is another kind of thing that we're exploring and seeing how does that work for users. It allows the bus to stop for less time, allow people to get on quickly, and also creates, again, some stickiness in the corridor. So mobility metrics here, and again, just in the interest of time, we'll focus on the these are calendar year figures that you're seeing in the column here that's populated for the most part. That's how we report, particularly on the safety metrics there in 1.1. You see that's where we have at the top line our total number of crashes with serious injuries and fatalities and percent change. You see that's not going in the direction that we want. And then underneath that is a series of breakouts of what that figure represents. In terms of the mode. There was discussion at the fiscal committee today about some of our micro-mobility with Lime, so e-bikes and scooters. Those crash data points are reported under the bicycle section. And so you can see that data there. But again, safety is always something we are looking at. So each time there is a serious fatality or injury crash, we look at the circumstances around that. Mobile GR works with our police and fire departments on things they are observing and do a number of things, including education, but also, again, in that engineering and design piece, where can we really start to separate the modes or change behavior in a way that will really enhance safety for all users of the system. So nothing to take lightly and something that we have a lot of focus on as information comes to us. So with that, turning it over to Mr.
Thank you, Ms. Behrens. I'll walk briefly through Safe Community and begin by reminding the City Commission of the overall objectives of us continuing with constitutional and community policing, focus on fire emergency medical services, especially with all the new assets we're opening throughout the city. Continued focus on emergency management, particularly with the transition of a new emergency manager. And how we continue to work with community and other partners, either through our co-response model, both with diversion programs, as well as some of the nonprofits that helps us work on crime prevention, as well as our Safe Task Force and Cure Violence. And lastly, the last component is our oversight and accountability efforts, both by boards as well as our office. So just a couple of highlights. You'll see we were able to really focus on domestic violence. That was a conversation last year or a couple of years ago, and we were able to get a $500,000 federal grant. Also, you'll see the increased staffing for our co-response team in collaboration with Network 180 for a third full-time social worker to cover the night shift. Very pleased with that, as well as the staffing of our police department. For the first time since I've been here, in 7 years, we are over 300 officers. And so now we can begin resuming some of those community services that we were unable to do previously, particularly around community policing, as well as address some of the future growth issues of the city. So real pleased with that progress. You'll see we've talked about this a couple times, making sure that we are doing everything we can to recruit and cast the net far and wide, everything from recruiting at HBCUs to using our local community college, GVRCC Academy, as well as GVSU. We've been getting a lot of good experience from other officers that are transferring from other departments. You'll see the 10 officers. I believe that might be the most. Is that the most in one year? I'm seeing a head nod there, as well as how we continue to evaluate our police officers in terms of recruiting. And you'll see the police chief did a good job of covering some of the accomplishments since his tenure, since his arrival in 2022, and that's highlighted in the graph on the right of the slide, and we've covered that previously, both here at Cal and Public Safety. Again, I really appreciate the state and federal government for their support and assistance in helping us fund some of the stations. Actually, you all were at several of the groundbreakings, but the federal funding has really helped with the new facility, the state funding as well. We are in the process of staffing for those stations and hired 19 recruits, and some of those were funded by the federal grant, as well as ordering new equipment. Those of you who were at the new station in the 3rd Ward saw the sliding doors there that's depicted, and that's only on the front side. The back side are regular doors, but the chief assures me that this is more efficient in terms of maintenance than a regular pull-up door. And we have, again, as I mentioned earlier, been managing the construction of the 2 stations and training center, as well as reevaluating how the HOT team has been deployed and has evolved since the inception. There you see our new emergency manager, Benjamin Rance, and we're pleased to have him on board coming from federal government, and we continue to focus on prevention and our community emergency response team. We have 72 active members, and also on planning and policy finalization of our emergency operations plan. And this is going to become even more important with the downtown assets of the arena convention center that already exists, but opening a soccer stadium and amphitheater. There are possibilities that we could have all of them activated at once, and there will be a lot of resource demand both for all of our public safety as well as the public works and city staff, and so we need to make sure that we're able to contingency plan for those events. You'll see some of the accomplishments around Office of Oversight and Public Accountability, the popularity or the need for the expungement efforts continue to grow, with over 610 individuals, and about half of those applications were able to be processed. You'll see the number of trainings on community-informed training. We went in detail at the Public Safety Committee meeting on how we collaboratively work with community in terms of design and delivery of these programs, as well as the transparency around the surveillance report, which I believe this year's report will be in December, by the end of the year. Is that accurate? I see Mr. Davis. As well as the 31 Know Your Rights workshop. I believe that's the most I've seen conducted since I've been here as well. Continue to partner with Cure Violence. Real pleased with their work. And there's no one silver bullet that is the answer to violence or violence prevention. And you'll see the over 4,000 interactions from Cure Violence and the results of the interactions that led to help with high-risk individuals, 127, and 288 interactions that led to mediation. So we're real appreciative of the Cure Violence and Urban League and that partnership. And then some other highlights of areas that affect safety through our Community Development Department around what they've done to ensure safe homes or public spaces, as well as compliance issues. Over 3,300 issues in cases were addressed, and 53 regarding blight and blight monitoring were closed. And you'll see the other efforts around the code compliance on some of the longstanding cases, as well as the Safe Task Force, some of the efforts that they have done through our community-led violence prevention effort. And many of them have been helpful in also in summer programming, especially when we have the highest incident of youth activity regarding crime. And I will just close on a couple of highlights. I'm always certainly interested in prevention of violent crime, and you'll see through June we were on a good trend, and that is through June. But through this year, we have 10, I believe 10 homicides year-to-date, the most recent one this weekend, unfortunate, but still below where we were last year. You'll see our response time for dispatch. There's also response times for both police and fire, which we also want to make sure that we are timely in our response. I think staffing has really helped with that. And you'll see other areas of metrics regarding oversight and accountability, and many of them this year we are still in the measuring stage. So overall, pretty good, pretty pleased with the progress on public safety. And so what we'll do is we'll pause here and see if there are any questions about what's been presented today on health and environment, mobility, or public safety, address those. And then if there are still other questions from last week, we're happy to revisit any of the topics that we presented on.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion here, so we'd like to kick it off. Commissioner Knight.
Thank you for the timeliness and efficiency of those presentations. I so appreciate that. Something that I've brought up before in thinking about our HOT team and how, you know, they've increased in some of the work they're doing, but also looking at what we've noticed is, you know, a dispersion of people, right, going farther into the communities, into the neighborhood, into the urban core, in places that we typically have not seen people. And I've had a couple of conversations with my colleagues about, you know, when there's construction, you notice that there's a shift of people from one spot to another, but also, you know, there's been a heavy concentration of people, especially in the Third Ward over by the Franklin and the Eastern area. And a lot of businesses have actually questioned and asked, you know, what do we do, right? They don't know what to do. They don't necessarily want it to be a calling the police all the time issue, but is there a way to deepen that relationship with those organizations as well as our mental health facilities and trying to provide services more in those areas? I mean, I drive through there all the time and I see it. And you've got youth organizations that have kids in those areas that are doing after-school programming and all of that, and there's concerns around those safety issues and how can we serve some of those same people that may have been down here and just, you know, pushed out to the fringes a little bit. So that was just something that I wanted to throw up again, and hopefully we can think about what that might look like. And then that's kind of it. I know my colleagues got some other stuff they're going to hit on, so I'm going to let them do that.
Mayor, if I could, I think Commissioner Knight raises an important point in terms of places where there may have been undeveloped or not as much attention whenever the development occurs, that does lead to disbursement. And that we're disrupting places where people unhoused may have been before. And so we had this conversation couple of weeks ago with members of the business community and talked about how we reinforce the communication effort and who to call, where to call to either our HOT team or Ms. Tammy Vincent, who is our homeless outreach coordinator, and we have created, I think, an updated flyer and literature to share with, I know, the downtown businesses, and we'll make sure we try to get that out to all the business districts and get that information out on the dais as well.
Commissioner Perdue.
Good morning. As a follow-up from what we discussed 2 weeks ago, last meeting, there were some questions that we left you with around some of the economic development KPIs. I haven't seen follow-up from that. When can we expect that?
This week, we're focusing on the balance of this presentation. We did review some of the questions that were answered. I'd have to look in specifically at which one and get back with you. We'll come back to that question.
Is it reasonable to get the answers by the next meeting in 2 weeks?
Oh, I'm saying I will get back to you by the end of this meeting. I just have to go back and refer to which specific question that you asked. We didn't present on that.
It was kind of some of the questions that I think Kate knows what I'm referring to, right? Okay. It was questions around how we're defining some of those incentives, economic development, and some of the housing builds. What is the definition behind some of those KPIs? So we can better understand. Thank you. So moving on to kind of what we talked about today, the pedestrian, particularly pedestrian safety, biker safety. I'm trying to find my place here. When we did this review last year, I believe others asked a number of questions around helmet safety, brain safety for riders in particular. This morning during fiscal, we had the renewal of the Lime contract come up, and so preparing for this week, I asked questions, what has been done in the last year regarding safety for all, really, kind of cyclists and e-scooter riders, kind of even separate from the one company, one Lime. And we haven't gotten a concrete answer on that, and so particularly looking at this year's KPIs around safety, still am asking those questions, still am asking what are we doing as a city to ensure safety above and beyond what we've been doing now, particularly for e-scooters. My concern is, they're concentrated downtown. They're really marketed for visitors. They're used a lot. Like some of the most risky behaviors with e-scooters is riding under the influence of alcohol, riding without a helmet, and riding with a passenger. And at least two of those three things you can visually see. And it's kind of the majority of what I witness when I see folks riding them downtown. I have a friend who passed away tragically in Grand Rapids after riding a scooter. We do have injuries. I think they're one thing that's underreported. So my ask is that we kind of look holistically at not just the regulatory items, but what are some of the behavioral strategies we can use to ensure safety throughout the city with multiple modes of mobility.
Commissioner, I do want to go back to last year, and then I'll defer to the staff. But the conversation about rider safety did not initiate on this dais. The fire chief, I recall, was the first person that raised the concern about rider safety and scooters some time ago. And then last summer, as I recall, the police chief similarly raised concerns about rider safety for a variety of reasons, both drunken as well as kind of nuisance behavior. And then that led to additional conversation here on the dais. There was robust discussion between the fire department, the police department, and Mobile GR. Very, very robust discussion about how to improve that. And I think some of the things that resulted from that was more geofencing, reducing the speed of certain devices, and particularly around after times that the bars were closed. So that was the staff's response, and we had reported on that, as I recall, during public safety, as well as having some of the conversation here on the dais. Relative to the conversation this morning on helmet safety, I believe that was discussed. It was reviewed, looked at, but there was not a solution that we focus on helmet safety. It was more on utilization, trying to slow down the speed of scooters, trying to geofence it, and reducing some of the risky behaviors around late night activity at bars. I'll defer on the other aspect of the question if there's other information.
I'll in response to that, safety is a multi-pronged conversation. You are right about that. And I know one thing that we did from some of the conversations that you mentioned was change it so that scooters have to ride in the street. They can't ride on the sidewalks. I still see that every day. I'm not sure how much if we've done an education campaign, if we have signs, because that's not being followed. And particularly during busy times, it's a challenge. And particularly as a driver, if folks are whipping down the sidewalk to cross the street, that also makes it difficult to see them. My comments are, yes, in response to kind of the options of of safety devices. So for example, we ask people to come and visit, to use these scooters, and then to sign off liability, including to sign off that they are going to use a helmet when we have not created the environment for that to really even be possible by design, right? By how we have what user we're targeting, as well as by like actual equipment being available. When we talked last week, you mentioned that there are other cities who have like helmet libraries or something. This is not a problem that I think is too hard for us to solve, and I think it's irresponsible for us to ask people to sign off on liability and to sign off on the right to seek compensation for injuries and so much and so forth when we're not designing it for them to have everything they need to do that.
So, Commissioner.
So in the last year, what I'm hearing is that not a ton of progress has been made on that conversation. Is that right?
So if I could, Commissioner, I think this is a great conversation for our retreat. I think there's a lot of complexity here. I'm with you on this. As a matter of fact, oddly enough, I have the ignominious distinction of having to try to have a helmet requirement for bicycles in the city, and that got an incredible amount of pushback. So I want to at least flag that we don't want to like also just have focused vision here on the things the city does. I mean, there are lots of people out there on bikes and on scooters, and I don't think we want to have one regulatory architecture for people who happen to rent and then say anybody else can do what they want. So
That's not what I suggested.
No, I know you're not, but I'm saying I think there's a really broader conversation here, and you're right. This is complex. So thank you for flagging it. I think that this is something we really should be. I think there's a much broader conversation here, and I think that questions of how we regulate, I think that, for example, we haven't done any regulation on e-bikes. I think we're long overdue to have a conversation about that, but these are bigger conversations that I don't think we're going to get done in this hour.
And to your point, Mayor, I think it might be worthwhile to dive deeper in at the retreat. And just, I mean, you sense my frustration that, we have these important conversations and in 6 months, a year goes by and there doesn't seem to be a ton of progress. Or if it is, it's not communicated back with us when we're on the front lines talking to folks about the work that we're trying to get done for them.
And if you aggregate the number of people who died from traffic deaths, I think I counted 10. Which puts us at equal to murders year to date. I could be wrong on that, but the point is, nationwide, we know that all of these things, the trend lines are not looking good on a lot of these metrics, and so making sure that we're keeping the community safe includes safe in transportation. Absolutely,
Mayor, I appreciate the dialogue, but I do want to be clear because I got a lot of staff that has frequently reported on traffic safety to public safety in a public setting, whether speeding, trucks, bikes, several times. So it is not that the conversation is heard and ignored. The work that's done may not be exactly prescripted as you would like, but there is work that is being done by the staff. And I don't want anybody to think that we just have these performative discussions. So I think a conversation at the retreat is good, but it would be unfair to leave this dialogue today with the representation that nothing's been done. And so I would just ask if there's anything else that the public should know about our efforts in slowing down these scooters. Because I agree, I was on the sidewalk the other day, and it wasn't an e-scooter that was rented by the city. It was a personal, private electric bike that almost ran me over, one as big as yours, riding on the sidewalk.
Yep.
And so, but the enforcement question is, where do we want to prioritize our enforcement? I don't want our police officers to spend time enforcing sidewalk violations. That's not the highest risk in terms of what's causing the most danger to our city, but I understand there's a balance and we got to figure that out. Is there anything else to add?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, City Manager. Like the fact that we have the data that we have, that we know how many, I mean, we are paying attention to this. I guess ultimately it's our job to come up with the answer to the question of, are there going to be better policies that we can have moving forward that can help drive the safety conversation in the right direction? So thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, City Manager. But I think it's a complex conversation, and it's not. It's going to get. We've already blown outside the bounds of the time we have here for it, I think. But go ahead, City Manager.
I've 3 times asked my staff, is there anything else to add?
So I think you've done a lot of the big picture with respect to the micromobility in particular. I will just flag that we have created a connection with our special events office so that we can do for particular events or times when we think the downtown is going to be particularly busy, we can do more geofencing. So that's something that special events folks talk to organizers about. That's a tool that we use. And there is also a lot of conversation with Lime, understanding Commissioner Perdue's feedback that may not be the best place. There is a lot of education and interactive, proactive acknowledgement that a user has to go through in that interface about safety protocols, where they're allowed to operate, et cetera. So again, we're working with people who sometimes don't want to use helmets for a lot of reasons, but message received also that there may be more we can do about education around helmet usage or helmet availability. So when we tee this up again to come forward, we can talk about additional options there and programs that may work in other jurisdictions on helmet utilization in particular.
Thank you. Other comments, feedback on the presentation? Commissioner Sassi.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the overview. I wanted to go back to the first section, to health and environment. And I wanted to, again, really more of a comment, I think, as we prep, to your point, for our mid-year review. Not so much a question, just more of support. I had the opportunity to go to the Urban Forestry Committee last month. My predecessor, Commissioner Kelly was very active and as well as Mayor Bliss, as you all know. And so we kind of have this little legacy in the second ward around our tree canopy, but also juxtaposing this with, the fact that we just passed the cap. And so looking at what are the additional investments that we might need to make to support, our canopy. We get a number of requests. I don't know what is my top 3, but, over the last year have just received a number of requests around different priority trees. I think some of you might have seen a resolution that came from one of our neighborhood associations around stump removal. I think we're at a sort of a year-long time frame of stump removal right now in the city. And so, my understanding is that right before I came on commission in 2019, there was going to be further investment into that work. And of course, COVID happened and all these things happened. And so I know we'll be seeing some of that additional information coming. And while there's a lot of things to consider, and we're living through a government shutdown. I think that this is, one of those core services on sort of like our infrastructure and really thinking about some of those questions around those priority trees. I think our forestry team does a great job. They're always responding to us. They, not only doing the work, but also responding to neighbors who have a lot of questions. So really not a question, Mr. Matthews, just more of a comment is, this will continue to be a priority for me, kind of holding up that legacy of the second ward, and I'll be interested to see, how that evolves as we go through that mid-year process. So I wanted to state that. And then my other question was, I know I have seen the organics pilot, in the break rooms and things like that. What's the time frame of that? Either I missed that or, I see it in here, but what does that look like? When do we start it? When will we kind of make a decision?
Well, we launched that early summer.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a few months under our belt at this point.
Okay.
And the idea was just to get a sense of the logistics of collecting, disposing. We actually have a larger receptacle on order right now that we want to identify a space in the community. I know one of the conversations that they had recently was with the Fulton Street Farmers Market. To take it to the next step, which is to test one of these larger receptacles in the field, which has technology where folks can use their phone, check in, unlock it, dump their materials, and we'll see what the volume looks like. Again, go through what does collection and disposal look like, with the hopes that throughout the course of this fiscal year, we'll have a plan going into the following fiscal year of expanding it throughout all the neighborhoods.
Great. And then in the next section under mobility, I have seen the dark cars around, so that's been kind of cool to see people in the city driving them around. But really I did see the headline. I didn't watch the meeting, but regarding Dash at the Mobile GR meeting. I know, Mayor, you're on there. I don't know, Commissioner Robbins, I don't know if you still serve on there, but I think sharing with the city manager at a couple of our two-on-ones ago, I think those are the right questions, like what is the intended use? I know last year, Commissioner O'Connor had asked about a consideration for, a nominal rate, perhaps $1 or $2. And then we have obviously these transformational projects that are coming online, and how do they play into how do people, get around? So I'm excited to hear where that conversation goes. I think it's definitely, it's not overdue, because I think I don't want to say that, but I think it's just we're hitting a critical point, and I think in some ways the Dash is, people are getting on with their, personal items. I'm seeing people who are in house. This is not trying to say they can't use the Dash, but like, where are we a Band-Aid for something else, and how do we continue to have that conversation? So, and I know, City Manager, you're an ardent supporter. I saw you with some people on there during the Art Prize timeframe. He had told people he had scheduled their private or their transportation. Then they found out they were going on a Dash bus. And so if that's not commitment to the city, I don't know what is. So that, again, that's more of a comment, but I'm really hopeful to see where that conversation evolves. And then lastly, on the safe community, I think this is. There's a number of things, and, obviously it's not just our police department, but I see a number of folks of our police department. We've done some ribbon cuttings around our fire department. I haven't met the new emergency manager, but, certainly, hearing that number increasing around, violence is, around murders is certainly concerning. I think we're also in an economic situation that we were in 2020, where there was a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of unknown. And so, looking at what are all these causes of, how this happens, and, great that we have a police chief that comes from a city that's getting a lot of recognition right now, maybe some good and some bad. But in particular, I think the question around gun violence is, yes, what are the programmatic pieces that we're doing here in the city? And so I've seen a lot play out on social media about, we need to do something more different. I would say, please reach out. We work with a number of different providers on different programs. We have our GRPS city liaison group. But I also think, and I don't know if this is something that you all talk about openly, or if it's something, but just tracking where the guns are coming from in our city. I know that there are different organizations or different communities that do different tracking to kind of see where the flow is of illegal guns. And so that's just something that I think we've talked about in the past, but I would love my memory to be reminded of that as it relates to, kind of the flow of these illegal guns.
Mayor, just real briefly, and you're very well aware of the conversations that are happening between the Rapid and the city around the Dash, our upcoming contract renewal, but also the way the services are delivered and where we can improve. Several of you have also brought up whether or not, given the cost of the operation, whether or not there should be additional funding that's not subsidized by the parking fund, but riders as well. And we have been in conversations with the CEO of the Dash and my staff, and are looking at that. And I think that contract expires next September, and so we'll be bringing forth some recommendations prior to the expiration of the contract.
Commissioner Robbins.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Good morning. I just had two quick items, one of which.
We had
no,
more?
go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question? Can I have an answer on the tracking?
On the guns?
Yeah, or if it's like, I got to get back to you, let me know.
Chief, do you have any updates on the tracing of illegal weapons?
Good morning, Commissioner. So I'll tell you, there is some limitation as far as federal law, as far as how much we can track guns. We do work with the DEA. Every gun that is recovered by the police department is run through the DEA. We do get a history on it. So anecdotally, I'll tell you that very rarely is a gun legally possessed that's used in a shooting, and Oftentimes they're acquired one of two ways. Number one, we get a lot of stolen guns. Guns which are taken, for example, in burglaries or cartridge thefts, are often sold for 10% of what they're actually worth on the street. So that's an easy way to obtain a gun. And secondly, is through straw purchasers, which the federal government did sort of a poor job enforcing straw. So I can legally purchase a gun. I will go down to a gun shop, get 5 handguns, and then sell them at a markup rate on the street for higher money. It's very illegal, but historically there's been very little enforcement on it. That's changed, I'd say, over the past 5 or so years. So we're getting better at that, but there's so many guns out there that it's very easy to acquire and illegally possess guns. So, but as far as like a pattern of are they coming from a certain gun store, and things like that, that's where it gets tricky with there's something called the Tyrart Amendment. I believe it's still in play, which in the advocacy for Second Amendment rights makes it difficult sometimes for law enforcement to put the pressure on gun stores by saying, hey, we have X amount of, I went through this in Chicago as an attorney in the legal process. We actually tried to sue some gun stores in Indiana, which accounted for something like 80% of the murder guns were coming from there. And we ran into some federal law that blocked our ability to do so. I believe it's still in place. So it's helpful to get that information. But from the world of a municipal police chief, there's only so much we can do on the big level. I will say, not to be all doom and gloom, the federal government has stepped up their efforts, and gun stores are, they'll do spot checks now where they'll send somebody in to make ostensibly a straw purchase, and if they sell that individual a gun, then they will be held accountable. They'll be shut down, so that word is out in the community. So it's getting harder, but I don't have any good news for you. Sorry. Thanks, Commissioner. Yep.
Commissioner Robbins.
Yeah, just 2 quick items from mine here, one of which Commissioner Sassi touched on. I was going to ask about the Dash ridership piece as well. I know we've had the conversation about some sort of nominal fee, so I was just curious to hear where that conversation landed, so I appreciate the update on that. And then the other piece too, I thought back when I had served on Mobile GR, there was some sort of qualitative survey that we had discussed at one point to better understand, maybe ridership is increasing, but is it just, the same individuals using it more, or are there more, unique individuals using it, and why? Just kind of getting some better context as to, why people are using it, and the type of demographics who are currently utilizing that. So maybe that was presented at Mobile GR or something, and I just haven't seen an update, but curious if there's any information to be shared on that. So I'll start with that one, and then I have another quick one after that.
I'm not sure. Is there a ridership survey?
Good morning, everyone. Jessica Smith, Mobile GR Director. Yes, so we're actually just wrapped up our onboard ridership surveys. We do those every couple of years, and we're still doing the analysis there to answer some of those questions, but preliminarily, if I can do that word correctly. One of the things we are finding is you're speaking to Commissioner Robbins about kind of unique riders. We do have what we call in the industry super riders, so folks that are kind of extra users of the service, so to speak, so kind of all day or very, very common users throughout. So those are some things that we noticed as we were collecting data, but we also asked things around, what are you using the Dash for? So like, are you coming from home? Are you going to work? And some things like that. So that's still in process, and we're hoping to wrap up our analysis here in the next month or so.
Okay, awesome. And that's the exact kind of information I know we had talked about trying to understand is it people from out of town here running it for events? Is it people using it for commuting? Is it people just kind of, trying to be in the AC on a hot summer day? Like all the above. So that's helpful to know. And then my second quick question was about the biodigester. I know, and you might have to refresh my memory. So I think we had a deal with the Rapid to sell the RNG to them at some sort of discounted rate maybe or something, that they went in a different direction. And so we then worked with the broker to bring it to the open market. So was curious, what has the outcome of that been? Like, are we selling it at a higher rate and getting more revenue at least from it, or is it pretty par of the course with what we're getting?
It was pretty consistent to what it is that we saw prior. One of the advantages that we're starting to see is there's still demand, and we're starting to see more interest in longer term agreements. At the same time, we're also looking at our current infrastructure to explore ways where we can actually expand our production of RNG, which not only increases our diversion, but it also increases our potential revenue, which increases our ability to pay off the bonds for the digesters. So those are all things that we'll probably be talking about in the coming fiscal year. We've been having a lot of conversations behind the doors on that.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's all I got.
Thanks. Commissioner Colgar.
Yes, so my first one here is health and environment. For green space, I'd like to hear if we have any feedback on dog parks or more access to green space in the third ward. We have a few less parks than both the first and second ward and want to see if that's within our planning. We also saw in the growth report, I think, that's one of the best ways to get young professionals and new folks within your city is to have dog parks. So just would like to hear if there's plans for that.
Yep, as Ms. Claypool is coming up, just open space and green space in particular is also obviously something that contributes to health, wellness, and a whole bunch of other things. So in addition to what Ms. Claypool is going to share about dog parks in particular, I just wanted to note that as part of the local land bank review, we're now looking at that portfolio. There are some non-buildable lots, and so the staff is going to be engaging with multiple departments, the land bank, business associations, neighborhood groups, et cetera, about options for those lots that may ultimately end up contributing to some open space as well.
That would be wonderful, Ms. Behrens, in that, and those are those weird like little triangle shapes and weird shapes I remember Mr. Booth going over. Do you know how many would be within the third ward for possible consideration?
I don't, but it's knowable. We can get that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good morning. So just talking about dog parks, we did complete a dog park study in the past year, which identified really the need for 4 larger sized dog parks for a city of our size. We do right now are in planning phases for development of one of those spaces. We are also getting ready to embark on an update to the Park and Recreation Master Plan, and we do intend to have part of that work really roll in further development of what that initiative can look like for our city. We also are exploring on the side some opportunities for pop-up dog parks. We are working on some pricing and some potential locations for that. So all of those things to come.
Great update. Out of that split of the, let's say tentative 4 parks, how many of those are included in the third ward?
The one that will be developed first is in the third ward. We're looking at McKay-JC.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. And then that brings me to, let's see, our mobility. If we go to bicycle facility changes, so I think that's slide 23, I'd like to hear feedback on protected bike lanes. We've had a lot of conversation about pedestrian safety. Research and data shows that this is one of the best ways to protect our neighbors and visitors within big cities. So I'd like to hear on plans on that, and also informally recognize this with my colleagues that this is another thing on November 13th that I will be putting as a priority is more increased access to protected bike lanes.
And bike lanes. All right, well, I'm going to see if I can phone a friend here. Certainly, we get feedback both that that protected bike lanes are appreciated and that protected bike lanes are frustrating to other users. So we do definitely work through engineering and mobile GR each time there's an opportunity to do something more hardened, more sort of capital intensive, what is the right fit, but I'm going to invite Ms. Smith to say more about how it is we make those selections of what's the right technique for different places.
Thank you. So I appreciate the larger conversation around safety and then understanding that there are several parts to safety for our transportation system, and one of those is getting the right infrastructure on the road. So with bicycle facilities, I call this bicycle planning, I would say 3.0. So 30 years ago when cities started saying maybe we should put in some bike lanes, and they started with some more just designating pieces of streets to kind of mix in different types of users and traffic. And then you moved into bike planning 2.0 where we said, we've got to have bike lanes everywhere. We need to have bike master plans and those types of things. And now the industry is moving towards a holistically focused planning effort. And that looks at every mode all the time throughout your transportation system, right? And so prioritizing things that users that are a little bit more vulnerable, such as your bikes and your peds. So bikes, peds, and transit. So those are the three. The other thing that happens with that type of planning is you're looking at, that is really how to move forward into a more modern city, is looking at those types of facilities. So back to the idea about protected bike lanes. I'd like to say that protected bike lanes are a type of facility that is appropriate in certain context. And what's really, really helpful about protected or separated facilities, I'm going to kind of lump those together with bicycles particularly, is that it gets to a larger percentage of users. So whereas I might be a very, very, I can handle more risk. I'm a very experienced bike rider. I know to wear the right protective gear, and I know how to navigate in all kinds of traffic situations. That is 10% of bicycle users or would-be users. So when you talk about more protected, separated, safer facilities for bicycle users, that's what you're looking at. And having those as a part of your larger transportation network is really key to moving what we call mode split. In other words, having folks that would otherwise be using some other mode of transportation get on their bikes or become a pedestrian, become a transit user. So this is a little bit more policy level is how I'm approaching the answer to this question, but just knowing that there are many different tools in that toolbox. And I want to make sure that when we talk about what the right tool is, it's got to be in a holistic transportation network planning effort.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Smith. And do you know about how many miles of protected bike lanes do we have currently?
I think it's somewhere in one of these reports in the last year or so. I'm remembering, but I can't pull it right off the top of my head, but good question.
Yeah, I was on Vital Streets before. I can't shake it. I'm just excited about it. But I think that it's really important to know, and I'm hopeful that we can have more investment and have more conversation on the 13th with that. That's all my concerns for now. Thank you all.
City Manager, you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. That's exactly where I was going to head it. There's some delineation in some of these projects here, which ones are buffered, which ones are, have some protection. But I think it would be a good baseline to see what are the number of miles of protected bike lane now, and then as we plan these new projects and new facilities, how many more are added that need protection and why. So I think it'd be helpful. Mayor, before you go on to the next one, I wanted to follow back up on the economic development question that was asked 2 weeks ago. And I think Ms. Behrens can at least provide an initial response to that question.
So one of the questions, and I don't have the slide in front of me, was statistics that we shared about an overall investment in various private development. If I remember correctly, the figure was like 18 million. I don't have the slide in front of me. The clarifying question was that all of our incentive programs are not. That was a 6-month number. So we do have an annualized number that we'll share in follow-up with the commission.
Thanks.
That was a 6-month number. I don't have that clicker. I'm sorry, slide.
Could you follow up with a more complete answer? I don't even know what
Commissioner, you asked about the materials from last week. We don't have the materials from last week on slide. We have the ones that we're briefing on today. So she responded that as her recollection, that was the answer, and then we'll follow up with a more written response to the full commission.
Commissioner Belichick?
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to review and discuss all the progress that is being made and where we can do more. I think that a lot of great discussions happened here, and I appreciate hearing from my colleagues on those things. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach just because so much has been covered already. But I would start by just putting the question out there that there is a significant amount of increase here with that 24% on the mobility safety. And so I just was putting the question out there, what might be the going on behind the scenes to be, what is the trend causing those things, the issues behind that. We talked a lot about the Lime and scooters and stuff, but if you notice there's increases across the board there on changes with serious injuries. And so as we have that discussion to be just trying to understand the root causes of that. So that would be a topic to discuss. I want to also say that I'm really proud of the equity framework that I see continuing to happen here, and in the discussion around transportation and other things, I want to not lose that part of it, because launching the new pool pass program and providing free swimming, I think, was incredibly essential, and certainly benefited my kids as well as some other families. And when we're looking at these inner urban neighborhoods that I live in and others, like this, these are the outlets that people have to have access to have good quality of life. So continuing to think about how are we accessing our amenities. That includes the pools, the parks, the buses, and so I want to say that I see it here in the metrics, I see it here in the report, and I don't want it to get lost in the conversation about what we can be doing better, because we have to continue the good work that we are doing, and that includes, where we're thinking about environmental justice. And so I'm just putting that out there. Again, different tactic here. But when it comes to safety, I would like to raise the question around safety and parking, third-party parking, air garage, and other kinds of things. I think that there's a larger conversation to be had there, and the city might be able to play a better role. Is there any thought that Mobile GR has going forward on dealing with that? I also see it as an economic development opportunity, so I want to put that out there.
So happy to hear more about your particular questions, but for an area to be used as a parking lot, just like available to the public, not affiliated with the use adjacent to it, there is a zoning regulatory piece to that. So if a private property owner wants to pursue that as a business endeavor, they have to work through planning to do that. And then they are able to operate that just like any private business is able to be operated. More, are you looking for?
So I'm thinking that there's
thinking about being.
Yes, I think we have a space and a role to play in that space as an economic development partner and a regulatory agency over how parking and fees and all that other stuff is in our neighborhoods and our business districts. So I'm just putting it out there because it's not something here, and we can talk more as we are having our retreat. But I also want to highlight in this that the policing aspect. I'm really actually proud of the commission for making investments in our policing, and I can't take credit for it because it was done before I came on board, but the fact that we had a third academy class is really remarkable. And what's exciting about that is that we are now at that point where we are able to do the community policing conversation that is what the community is asking for. And I see that as part of our equity as well. So I guess I just want us to keep thinking about bringing all the pieces together. I know the staff are doing that. I hear questions here that my colleagues are raising, and I don't see this as individual or siloed things. I do think that there's more to be done here with the forestry maintenance and the canopy as well. So I'm not going to be labor the issues here today, but I'm looking forward to our retreat so we can talk about that. And I just think this was a really great overview of where we've been so we can begin that next level of discussion.
Thanks, Commissioner. So I'm going to make a few categorized bits of feedback. And so I don't have any questions. I think that, and I certainly want to put this in context, I think that everything we are doing, I'm seeing lots of movement in the direction that I think our citizens want, and I think the direction that we want to be moving. Public safety, those of you who don't sit on public safety, our numbers are really good. Our police force continues to move in the direction of excellence and continuous improvement, and they're constantly having questions about how they can provide their services better. Same with fire. Certainly, I think that that's true in mobility. These conversations are happening. So I just want to throw out, when I look at the metrics and the things we're measuring, some of this is a question of what we're measuring and whether we're capturing what we're measuring. So in the mobility space, I noticed that when we're talking about pedestrians and micromobility, I think that if I understood that slide correctly, we're largely having those numbers, the analysis driven by surveys now. So how often, you were asking people how often they walk. We're not or how often they bike. We're not actually at the point now, and I think our next mature level would be to actually start having some bike counters so that we actually know how many people are biking. I know that the Rapid has done some surveying on this too, but like knowing what's going on the ground would give us, I think, a better picture of like, oh, this is developing into a corridor that people are using. We should prioritize that better. So having all of our transportation planning around what people are actually doing and reinforcing what people want to do means capturing the actual patterns of use. And I think that'd be a next good place to go. I think that when we're talking about mobility things, I really think this is an area where we can benefit most from piloting and from looking at best practices in other places. And so I go to a lot of other cities and I see a lot of things in the pedestrian and cycling space that I'm not seeing matured in Grand Rapids yet. So for example, lots of cities use bollards, lots of cities have, as Commissioner Kilgore pointed out, a lot of separated bike lanes. There's lots of painting going on. There's lots of intersection redesign. There's lots of raising intersections. There's lots of exciting ideas out there that are getting implemented in cities around the continent and around the world. And I think that with the passage of the state budget that's going to give us more money for particularly roads, I think that this is an opportunity for us to maybe do some real visioning on how we can do some real transformative cultural, to quote Chairman Mao, perhaps a great leap forward in our transportation visioning in the city. And I think that that's something where I just want to throw out the idea that we may want to get a consultant involved in this, because there are nationwide people who do work in this space, and who what I don't want us to do is have a collection of, a basket of all of our bright ideas be what we do with an opportunity to do some structural and coordinated work on mobility. I do think there's a conversation to be had, and thank you for bringing this up, Commissioner, around safety. We don't have any differentiated regulations right now, for example, on the difference between bikes and e-bikes, and not all e-bikes are equal. And I think that that's going to be something that people are going to adopt more and more and more, and they're going to own their own. And I think one of the reasons we're probably seeing less renting of bikes is because people like me go out and buy their own bike. Once they figure out they want to come to work on a bike, they're not going to rent one every day. They're going to go buy a bike. So making sure that our conversation's not just around the programs that we've initiated with Lime, but there are a lot of people out in the community, and there's a growing number. I think the Rapid thinks there's basically a 2-to-1 ratio now of people biking to using public transportation in the city. So there's been a real increase in cycling activity, and I think we need to make sure that our regulations keep up with the safety concerns. In public safety, I just want to flag, again, I think that our core functions are really being performed well, but I do think that we want to have a conversation, as again we've had public safety trust fund money come out of the state budget, around what we want to in-house that we maybe have been outsourcing in public safety, and broaden our vision, because public safety doesn't just mean protecting people from crime. It means reducing conflicts in the community generally, and those are things that we've started to make some first steps on, but I welcome conversations about how we can do next steps, not just on co-response, but on how we can do conflict resolution in the community more effectively, and something that we can, I would hope, own, have in-house functioning on, because then we simply have better accountability. As far as parks go, again, I see that the only metric I had for use was more programming in parks, and programming is good, but I think that park activation, I think the next level for us would be to actually look at how many people are using parks, and look at those numbers as a metric for whether a park's successful or not. So there are some parks in town that are incredibly activated, and there are things for people to do in them. I'm thinking the one in my neighborhood by Cherry and Diamond, incredibly activated. There are other parks that are less used, and so I think that a mature conversation will be, parks are only good to the extent that people use them, and making sure that we're tracking use and not just programming, but also our next mega park in the city is going to be the river, and I think we ought to have conversations about how we're actually going to activate use of the river. And finally, I will say, since everyone knows dog parks is one of my things, I don't think 4 dog parks in the city is enough. We've got a metric for having a park within 10 minutes of everyone. I don't want to have to put my dog in the back carrier in my bike and bike them down to a dog park. I think people want dog parks they can walk to. So anything we can do to move towards real dispersion. And again, this is the use question. What do people actually want to do in their parks, and what do they actually want to do in their community? So I think all of our conversations have to be focused on like what our citizens want. So those are just random thoughts. Thank you, and thank you for the great presentation. Thank you to the staff for all the work. As I said, I think that our vision here is exciting, and I think that it's great to see the work that's happened and to see the trend lines as we move forward. And I think that we can go out and have even more exciting ideas and see where we go with them to make the city amazing. So thank you for the work, and thank you, City Manager, for pulling all this together.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things, because I want to make sure everyone understands this conversation. So today we were trying to give an update performance report. The feedback's been great, but we will need to have more deeper dialogue on any proposed changes where we get the consensus of the commission or the majority of the commission in light of individual preferences. So that is the purpose of the retreat. I did want to just clarify on one of the comments I heard earlier, and I think it was around regulating private parking, if I understood the feedback around safety, and just to make sure that we all have a good public understanding of this minimally. While the city can control the rates that we offer on the street for our metered rates or our parking ramps, I don't believe we have any regulatory authority to control the rates on private property. I believe the city can control its zoning and land use where we might want to see it, but in terms of what they charge, I don't think our home rule ability gives us the right to charge that, to control private parking rates. So I just wanted to say that for some of the operators that might be listening now who are, their rates are, I think the city has the most affordable rates in all public parking. I want to say that. We beat the private sector every year, and I'm very proud of that. But I don't think we can control what they charge for their private use once they're licensed to do so.
Yep, thank you.
Let me just I'll add one more thing. So we do license them. There is an ordinance for that. But one of those regulations, I think some of the complaints is people don't see the signs. And so the signage is an important part of that. So that's the first thing that we get on is make sure that people are aware.
And let me say also, as a person who parked for 1 hour in one of those private parking spots, ended up with a $90 fee. I did not appreciate that lack of notice either.
And I will say, as someone who's on Mobile GR, I know that Ms. Smith is working diligently on figuring out a macro understanding of parking downtown. We got a whole program to do surveys to make the what's out there question obviously has to be first, and then the how do we accommodate and make use more effective. And so I think she's been doing a great job on that. There's a complex conversation, some of that's happening at Mobile GR. And it may be that that's something that we want to update the commission on at some point in the future, so we're all on the same page. But I think everybody in the city understands, A, we've got some new big uses coming online. B, there's this tension between, parking systems that look great until you got to take out a new mortgage to pay the fee from the private collector. And C, how the city can do a better job of potentially being a good partner with those private landowners. And I think that there are ways that we can improve that at the city, but those are really under discussion already now. So I'm sure that'll be coming to the commission in due time. But the first is the analysis, and then some programming and some figuring out how to make things work technically. And if there's one thing I know Ms. Smith does well, it's get the technical details right before she comes up with a recommendation. So thanks again, everybody. And I think that adjourns our meeting. Sorry. We are going to be going into closed session to discuss a legal opinion, and I believe that calls for a roll call vote. So need a motion first.
I'll move.
Support.
Commissioner Kilgore,
Yes.
Commissioner Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins.
Yes.
Commissioner Sassi.
Yes.
Commissioner Purdue,
Yes.
Commissioner Belcheck.
Yes.
Mayor LaGrand.
Yes, and we will be convening in room 601 right now.
Thanks.
Commissioner Not Game Code.